Alright, y'all, let's talk about feelings of abandonment both in children as well as in adults. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn. Alright, y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you are a returner, if you are new, my name is Jessica Lang and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here on, here on YouTube. Sorry. Oh, really funny. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm actually licensed in California, not licensed on YouTube. Oh, that should not be as funny as it is. So anyway, I talk about all things related to attachment, trauma, the brain, and healing here on this channel. So if that is your jam, then go ahead and click the subscribe button down below and ring the notification bell so you can be notified every time I upload a new video. Alright, so I wanted to talk today all about feelings of abandonment and actually how this relates to anxious attachment. So in the last video I talked about a little bit about how anxious attachment develops. One things I've noticed, not just in my professional career, just in life in general, is that a lot of folks struggle with this feeling of abandonment. So they end up getting into relationships or, they get into relationships with people who are not so healthy, and they do certain behaviors, some clingy behaviors, have a hard time with being alone, and a lot of fear around loss and feeling unloved and things like that, which is very similar to how a child feels who is anxiously attached. And so it just got me thinking about that correlation between those feelings of abandonment, fear around being alone, and being anxiously attached to another person. And so when it comes to an anxious attachment, the word is in the attachment. It is like an unease, an insecurity for another word. When you're in relationship with somebody else, it's a lot of fear about loss and around not, like I said before, not being unloved, and feelings of not feeling safe. Especially if you are by yourself, but also feeling unsafe even in your relationships, constantly questioning things, seeking out reassurance that the person is going to stay, that they love you, being maybe a people pleaser where you do all of these things to take care of other people, because at the end of the day what you're hoping for, when it's unconscious, is that the person will stay, that they will not leave you and you will not be alone. And as that kind of pertains to that anxious attachment, again, like I said in the last video when I talked about anxious attachment, it's that early inconsistent caregiving. And so one moment parents involved, attuned, caring, loving, you feel safe, you feel nurtured, you feel protected in that space when that person is present. And then when they're gone, even if they're physically present but they're completely checked out or they're disconnected. And a baby who doesn't have the ability to kind of regulate themselves, it's incredibly dysregulating for their parent, for their caregiver to be checked out. It actually elicits that stress response system. Lovely. It actually elicits the stress responses in that moment. So you are in an actual fight, flight, freeze response. So you have that. You do feel, oh my gosh, there's a threat to my system when there's that disconnection as a baby. So you have those repeated types of patterns where, you feel safe and loving and, happy when a person's there. And then when a person's not there, they're disconnected, you feel that threat. But what happens also is because it's super inconsistent, you don't know when a person is going to be there, you don't know when they're going to be engaged or when they're going to be disconnected. You start to get anxiety even when the person is present, because you're anticipating that they're going to leave. And so that's kind of the but that's not a word. That's kind of the realm of the way the anxious attachment works. And we talk about anxious attachment from a child's perspective, so how they're attached to their parent. But when you kind of go along in life and you have that initial attachment to your parents, and then you start to enter into relationships, and this is where we're going to talk about kids. Kids, once they hit primary school, they start to go to school in kindergarten, first grade, and they make friends. I mean, they also have preschool, but they start to make their friends. But we don't really see these things until they get to be like 6, 7. They start to have their friendships, and what you start to see is, like, if kids are very fickle. They like to play with everybody. That's my best friend, one day, and then the next day this other person is my best friend. Sometimes they want to play with you, sometimes they want to play with somebody else. But for these kids who've got this anxious attachment style, what happens is that when their friend doesn't want to play with them, they actually feel that same type of threat. Again, they don't have the words for this, but they have the behaviors. You see it in the behaviors, but they have that same kind of visceral reaction that they did when they were younger with their parents who weren't available, when their parents kind of did that disconnection. Oh God, I'm alone. No, they don't love me. I'm unloved. I'm scared. I'm afraid. Their little systems are in threat, are feeling threatened, and so they are in fight, flight, freeze response. I just say them all together. And one of the things we do when we feel that sense of threat and that system gets kicked in is we actually go for social engagement. So one of the ways we try to minimize and manage our stress response is to seek out support from other people. So what you get is somebody who starts to be, they go to that person and they're trying to be, play with them. This is a kid. They want to play with them, play with me, da da da. And if their friends say, no, I don't want to play with you, or they can't go out of their group, then they might go, they won't go play by themselves. They might go seek other kids to play with, or they'll go to an adult and not say, oh, this person doesn't want to be with me, but they'll be very sad and upset, but they'll be like clingy. They're actually physically clinging to either their friends, trying to cling to other children, or they'll cling to an adult. So that's how you see kind of that anxious attachment showing up. And it's all around that feeling of abandonment, that feeling of unsafety, that I'm unsafe, I can't be by myself, that threat of, for lack of a better word, it sounds dramatic, but the world is ending kind of a thing because I'm by myself, because they don't know how to regulate themselves, right? They can't regulate themselves in that alone state, and they have been anticipating that the person is going to leave, and it's just all these early kind of connections that were made. And so with little kids, you see that in their friendships, when they have they have their best friend, that's who they want to play with, and they're very clingy with their friend. But if their friend doesn't want to play with them one day, then they just really fall apart. They just, it's very, very hard for them. And then as, this same child gets to be a teenager and they start getting into romantic relationships, and same, into adulthood, they're checking your phone, they're asking where you're going to be, they want to spend every minute with you. You can go upstairs to go talk to somebody, talk to a family member, and here comes that anxiously attached person following them. They cannot tolerate the distance, because they literally feel like their system feels like it's in a threat response, like they feel threatened. And so again, these are the types of and going off on like a minor tangent, actually, what's really fascinating is for kids who grow up to be adults who are anxiously attached, you would think that they would gravitate towards somebody who is also anxiously attached. And so here you go, you've got two folks who are anxiously attached, and so you get a lot of enmeshment. Sometimes that does work, but what you actually end up getting is folks who are anxiously attached being drawn to the avoidant type of person who has a more avoidant attachment style. So and I'll talk about that in subsequent videos, because I love talking about attachment. It's so interesting. And sometimes they'll go for like a securely attached person, but it's just always really interesting because I don't want to say almost always, but yeah, most of the time what I see is an anxiously attached person who is drawn to somebody who's avoidant, and it's a mess. Or somebody who's a narcissist is another type. I mean, narcissists are just very good at picking out a person's vulnerabilities, and so that's what they attach to, and that's what they manipulate with. And I'm not going to talk about narcissism. A lot more folks talk about that. I have a great colleague who has a podcast called A Dance with Darkness, and she talks all about narcissism, so I'm not touching it. That's for her. But it's just an interesting kind of way that we all are in kind of who we naturally gravitate towards. So we've got this anxious attachment. It's really hard for us, for those of us who are anxiously attached, to be alone. We really find security, but it's not even security. You're still anxious even when you're with that person, because you're constantly questioning whether they're going to stay, whether they love you, when they don't respond to your text message, you know, right after you send it, oh my God, what are they doing? They're going to leave me. They're planning to leave me. I mean, their mind is constantly going, and they just do all of these things. They really cling on, and you're, you know, we're described as, I don't know why I'm saying we, you know, those of us who are anxiously attached I got distracted, sorry. You know, these folks are described as clingy, and it's a very pejorative word, and, you know, a lot of negative connotations associated with it, but it's actually very accurate. And so I don't want to like shame anybody who has those types of behaviors, because what is coming from is a very real fear of being alone and feeling unloved, and that disconnection actually is felt on a neurobiological, sensory, body-based level. It's not a cognitive, okay, I'm going to not be clingy, because that's not how that works. It's really around those early caregiving experiences where you're kind of, wait, I don't really know what's going on. I think, is the person here? Are they not here? You know, it's a lot of ambivalence in there. So it's really hard for these people as they get older in their adult relationships. But like I said, you can also see this in children who have a really hard time with separation from their caregivers. Even at 5 and 7, you know, separations can cause tantrums, lots of tears. These kids are often considered overly sensitive. Put that in because that's another kind of pejorative term. They, you know, struggle in their relationships. Yeah, they might have friends, but, you know, they might be changing friend groups quite frequently, because people, even little kids, can get tired of like that kind of clingy personality. They, you know, are the type of kid who kind of ruminates things or needs constant reassurance around things. You see this again in their behaviors. You see the types of words that they say. They might be really jealous of other kids, things like that, but they don't have that cognitive ability to be like, oh, it's because I'm anxiously attached, that's why I'm behaving this way. No, they just know that they feel deeply unsettled, and they will come to you with headaches and stomach aches and all kinds of somatic complaints. Even at bedtime, you might have a hard time with that separation. They might want to always sleep with you, or, you know, they need you to come in, you know, I need 10 stories. Again, you got to look at a child's development. This is developmentally appropriate for, you know, a 3 or 4-year-old who will want to sleep with you constantly, will not want that separation. I might get a little heat from this because I know it's also a cultural thing. So we're going to talk about kind of in the culture of the United States. Most kids, you know, they get to be about 8, 9, 10. As they kind of edge more towards puberty, they really don't want to sleep with their parents. But if you still got your 10, 11, you know, 12-year-old who cannot sleep alone, I would be looking into, you know, and they've got other types of behaviors that make you kind of go, I would be looking, I wonder if my child actually has some anxiety around being alone, and that's why, you know, they want to sleep with me. Again, this is not a judgment. I don't want anyone to feel judged by what I'm saying. Just want, like I tell all my clients, it's about getting curious about kind of the intent or the reasons why behind things. Because once you have that understanding about what's going on, then you can kind of work with it. We're not trying to, you know, say anybody's bad or awful, but these are the types of things that can cause you conflict, especially when you get older. It's, you know, if you have a hard time being alone, or you really need the object of your attachment to be right here, right now, then when that person has to go to work or whatever, you're going to feel that threat. You're going to feel that, oh my God, I'm all alone. You're going to feel that unloved. You're going to feel unloved. And because you feel that way, what you then go into is, you know, kind of pester your partner. This is when the person's older, obviously, and your partner might not be reciprocal, might not be pleased with that behavior. So what ends up happening is you kind of reinforce your fear, because in your efforts of trying to keep this person close to you, you actually push them away. So it's counterintuitive. So again, we don't want to judge and say, oh, you know, kids shouldn't do blah, 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 blah. It's just sort of like, I wonder if this is something I should be paying attention to. You know, I wonder if, you know, something else is going on with my child. Okay, so I decided to kind of come up with about 3 tips that you can use if you are a parent or a caregiver who has a child who is anxiously attached. Now, you could use these also, can modify them. If you are an adult and like, I think I struggle with this really bad. You can modify them and make them work for yourself, especially the third one, because that's something, you know, that you can definitely do on your own. So the first tip is to take care of your own mental health. So when we talk about mental health, you know, people talk about diagnosable things like depression, anxiety, bipolar, you know, things of that nature. But let's, you know, expand this. Think globally of our mental health or our mental wellness. So, you know, our ability to kind of manage our own stressors. Maybe we have some childhood wounds, you know, from our parents where we felt like our parents weren't there for us. Not that they were abusive in any way, but they were kind of checked out on their own. And so, or they were overly involved or whatever it was that kind of caused you some distress. Maybe you're still kind of hanging on to some of that. Again, this is not judgment. This is being curious. So maybe you're kind of holding on to some of that stuff. There's some lingering wounds that are there that are now showing up in your parenting with in a relationship with your child. So kind of tackle your own kind of mental health and say, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I need some support around. And then you can go about getting that support so you can be present for your child, and you could, you know, be more intentional about the way you engage with them and how you can support them so that they feel they don't feel so anxious about being alone. They don't feel abandoned, right? They don't feel like when they're by themselves, they are therefore abandoned. They are therefore nobody loves them. They don't feel that great sense of loss and that, you know, overwhelming sense of grief. You know, you can support them with, you know, putting words to their thoughts and their behaviors and helping them to express what's going on for themselves. Number 2 is just in general to be more intentional. We all can be guilty of just kind of burying things. We feel really overwhelmed, or, you know, maybe we're not feeling very good about ourselves, or we're just having thoughts or feelings or sensations, things that just make us feel really uncomfortable or embarrassed or ashamed, and so we try to bury them. But when we bury the negative, we also have a way of not allowing in even the positive, and then the negative, it will still come back out some type of way. It'll show its ugly head. And so giving yourself some time and some space to just kind of acknowledge that I'm not feeling that great, and because I'm not feeling so great, you know, I probably should get some more support. And again, this is not a conversation about like a mental health disorder or diagnosis. You don't have to have depression or bipolar or whatever to just not be feeling great. You could just be feeling a lot of grief, or you could just be feeling a lot of sadness. That doesn't mean you're depressed, right? You could be worried about, you know, your job, or, you know, maybe you and your partner are having some issues, and so you're feeling worried about that, right? Just general life stressors, whatever it is that can be just weighing you down and keeping you kind of disconnected from your child or from your relationships. You know, maybe bringing in some support. So that could be a therapist, that could be clergy. I don't know why that came to my mind, but, you know, maybe a rabbi or a priest or something. You know, if you're religious, getting your child involved with, I don't know why I was going to say Boy Scouts, but okay, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, or, you know, getting them in activity, being around friends or family, but just kind of giving, what's the word I'm looking for? So building up the community, your village, right? And having support in that way can go a long way in kind of releasing some of that pressure off of yourself. And the last one is really about just kind of learning some basic self-regulation tools, learning to manage your own inner discomfort. In somatic experiencing, we talk about the felt sense. So being able to tap into different parts of your body to feel the different sensations as they kind of ebb and move and flow through your body. You can notice that there's parts, maybe your stomach gets tight, and what happens, you know, you explore, you think about what happens when my stomach gets tight. What does that feel like for me? What do I then do when my stomach gets tight? And, you know, as opposed to like maybe my feet feel really solid on the ground, and that's something that makes me feel very safe. And so you can move between the two of just noticing, oh, I feel really tense here, and sitting with it and not trying to make it do anything, just going, oh, right here I feel tense. And then and just keep noticing what's happening in different parts of your body as you kind of tap in and check in. And if it becomes too overwhelming, then you can move to your feet and, oh, this is where I feel grounded and solid. This is okay. I feel happy here. I feel at peace here. Okay, now I'm going to go tap into like that discomfort. So, you know, you can kind of do that type of exercise on your own. You don't have to necessarily go to therapy to do some somatic experiencing or doing that felt sense, but it's a way of allowing you to kind of see that our bodies have a natural ebb and flow, right? Energy moves. I tell my clients this all the time, especially those who have trauma, because what happens is you get stuck, right? What you become afraid of is the actual sensations, and you're trying to avoid those sensations because of the thoughts or the beliefs or whatever, you know, that comes along with it. And so you kind of stop it unless it's super overwhelming. And a lot of folks either feel things really intensely or they feel nothing at all. They don't have that in between space. And because it's all felt so intensely, these two extremes, that's what they start to become afraid of. That's part of the trauma responses. Ooh, that numb feeling. When I'm in that numb place, you know, that leads to ABCD. When I'm in that really hyper aroused, I'm ready to fight, or I'm going to go have sex with, 10 people. Again, not judging, but these are just things people do. You know, that kind of place of high energy, those things can be very scary for somebody. And so they kind of disconnect, so they don't feel anything, as opposed to like, oh, there's a natural kind of ebb and flow of like, sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad. I have this really sad memory and it makes me feel sick when I think about it, but I know it'll pass, right? It's like, no, your body doesn't know it's going to pass. It thinks, oh God, this bad, terrible thing is happening all over again. So that's, when we use these kind of techniques and like somatic experiencing around the felt sense, it's a way of kind of helping your body move through and understand and tolerate different sensations without being overwhelmed. So it's something that you can just do, even if you don't have a trauma history, that you can do just to kind of, okay, this is what's going on for me, and this is when I feel this way. Let me just take a moment. All right, and just kind of feel it. So, I need water. All right, so that's all I have for you all today. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You can also comment down below, share your thoughts on what I talked about with feelings of abandonment and kind of how it relates to anxious attachment. If you like this type of content also, you can sign up for my email list where I send out a weekly newsletter with blogs and just checking in, and sometimes there's freebies attached. So, if you want to learn more or you're just curious, you can go ahead and sign up for my email list. All right, so like I said, that's all I have for y'all today. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.